short video, I'm going to reveal a weird little secret that will let you start speaking English language you want while practicing for just an hour a day. And with no textbook, no grammar drills, no classes, no flashcards, and without studying any vocabulary at all. In fact, even though this might sound impossible now, once you watch this short presentation and do what it says, this rapid language learning technique I'm about to show you, you'll feel like you suddenly have the magic keys to English, the language center of your mind, and feel confident striking up basic conversations with the locals. You'll impress your date, and I personally promise you what I'm about to teach you will work, no matter how old you are and got an F on every test, no matter how busy you are, and no matter how many times you've tried and failed to learn an English language before, even if you've hired a private tutor, took intensive classes, studied for years in high school, or invested in expensive software and were disappointed like so many people are with the results. So why has learning English language always seemed like a struggle, even though it should feel completely natural? I don't know about you, but the first time I tried to learn English language, it wasn't fun and easy, which really is the way it's supposed to be. It was a nightmare. Every day I'd shuffle into the classroom, cram myself into one of those uncomfortable desks, and spend 45 minutes trying to force myself to pay attention to grammar rules, sentence constructions, and endless, painful vocabulary lists, all while hoping like crazy that I wouldn't be called on to explain the difference between present perfect and future imperfect, or something else ridiculous like that. Now here's the really sad part. I was a pretty good student. Even though I knew tons of vocabulary words and conjugations, I still couldn't speak English, the language, as well as your 2-year-old. And I felt embarrassed and dumb every time I opened my mouth to try to talk to someone who'd grown up with the language or just picked it up by living over there. Finally, like so many people I know, I just gave up. I resigned myself to never being able to speak English language, to feeling like there was something wrong with me, and to always being disappointed and ashamed. But then, a few years ago, I stumbled onto a simple question that changed everything for me and opened a door that led me to speak English in less time than I ever thought possible. What's the big question? Well, it sounds kind of silly, but here it is. Have you ever seen a 2-year-old studying a vocabulary list? I'm totally serious. Think about it. If you've been around kids at all, you know they suck up language like a sponge. It's almost like they can't help themselves. They're like little language learning machines. But kids don't study grammar rules, take vocabulary tests, or sit in a classroom to learn how to speak. In fact, we don't teach kids to speak at all. We just expect them to do it. They learn by doing what humans have been doing for thousands and thousands of years, listening. You'll actually discover that adults can learn a new language much faster than kids can. Honestly, learning new languages so fast is a survival mechanism. Language is what makes us the dominant species on the planet. And if we couldn't learn languages really fast, we simply wouldn't have survived as long as we did. Every language on Earth is structurally pretty much the same and is embedded deep in your mind. And right now, as you watch this video, you already have the ability to almost accidentally pick up English language you want in no time at all, in the same way you can sing along to thousands of songs you never meant to learn. The fact is, humans remember sounds and store them away in our memory automatically and unconsciously, which means we can soak up languages incredibly quickly without feeling like it's a struggle. In fact, working at it by studying a textbook or taking a bunch of tests is a great way to slow yourself down by memorizing a bunch of rules. Nope, the only way to learn a language fast is to learn it like a kid does, by hearing the language, speaking the language, and totally ignoring grammar, reading, writing, and vocabulary. When I finally figured this out, I was shocked and a little mad. But more than that, I was blown away by how quickly English phrases that stymied me for years suddenly just made sense, and at how my mind just opened up to new words, phrases, and ideas like a hungry bird waiting for a worm. And after years of research, figured out a simple system to almost magically install English language into any person's mind so that they don't have to work as hard and can strike up basic conversations. Learning to write a language before you speak it, like we do in our school system, is a complete waste of time. That's certainly not the way little kids learn. Years and years research, not to mention a lot of everyday proof, shows that the way for the human mind to rapidly acquire a new language is by hearing the language used naturally in an everyday context and interacting with the language so it really sticks in your mind. When you know what sounds right, everything else is easy. Need proof? Think about this for a second. If I say, "I bread needs," does that sound right to you? Of course not. At a deep level, your brain knows that the phrase should be, "I need bread." And that has nothing to do with you learning grammar rules or thinking about verbs, nouns, and clauses. It's because your internal language software already knows what language is supposed to sound like. Cool, huh? stuck a dagger in the heart of the learn a ton of words and study for years myth by focusing language learning on a few core function words, which you can think of as building blocks. Words that you use every day, the words that children naturally just pick up in their everyday lives. See, you might think that you need to learn thousands upon thousands of words to learn English language, but in reality, the core vocabulary you need to get by English language and begin sounding like a native speaker is tiny. And when you focus on these function words, your mind automatically learns grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation all at once, and without any of the mind-numbing study of traditional language learning. Summing it up, according to research, in order to rapidly and easily learn English language, you just need to do 4 things. 1. You need to hear the language spoken by native speakers in everyday situations and utterly ignore writing and reading until the core hooks of the language are deep in your mind. You need to focus on core function words and phrases used in everyday conversation. You need to practice for only an hour a day, even if you have to break it up throughout the day, such as while getting dressed, commuting to work, or while you're on your lunch break. Now, if you're like a lot of people, you might be thinking, okay, you've convinced me there's a faster and easier way to speak English language, but how do I actually do it? I'm glad you asked. The Quick and Simple course is a step-by-step audio program based on proven methods and is designed to take you from knowing nothing about English language to striking up basic conversations. And it works even if you don't speak a single word English language now, even if you flunked English language classes in high school. If you're like most of the thousands and thousands of people who've gone through this program, you'll begin to sound like you were born there. Native English speakers will stop in their tracks and comment on how natural you sound. You'll start thinking in English language whenever you speak it. You'll find yourself responding to questions automatically without having to scour your memory for the right word to say. And you'll get started on the path to truly using English language and smiling. And going through the course is as simple as putting on your headphones an hour a day. All you need to do is sit back, push play, listen, and respond. It really is that easy, and you can use the program anytime, anywhere, even while you're doing other things like driving or walking. In fact, if you're like our thousands of ecstatic customers, you'll learn English language while doing mindless tasks, on your lunch break, during your drive or walk to work, while getting dressed in the morning, while shaving, while walking on the treadmill, while cooking your favorite meals, while washing the dishes. Anytime you've got a pair of headphones and a few minutes. And remarkably, it's scientifically sequenced to lock English language in your brain after just one listen. Just listen to what Monica had to say. This is fantastic. I've always wanted to speak English, and I've been trying for the past 2 years. Nothing worked till now. Within the first week of using your Quick and Simple course, I learned more than I managed to learn during those 2 years. I'm so amazed. Thank you so much. You made one of my biggest dreams come true. Here's one of my favorites from Drayton Bird. He's a best-selling author, and while doing a consulting project for us, he wanted to share this unpaid endorsement because of how much he loves our methodology. I used to have to visit our office regularly to review work being created for our biggest clients. It was embarrassing because I couldn't speak English, the language, not a word. I knew what a difference it made. I spent an hour every day. I strolled up and down each morning outside our chalet looking at the ocean, headphones on, listening and repeating. Shortly afterwards, my colleagues were really astonished. So was I, to be honest. And those are just a few of the tens of thousands of emails we've received from incredibly satisfied men and women from around the world after using this simple, proven system. Okay, this sounds amazing, and I'm interested. How do I get started? Honestly, this is the only course like this in existence, so there's nothing to compare it to. So let's just think of the alternatives you could try. Or you've already tried to English language, get ahead in your career, or be able to mingle with locals in any country you visit. You could buy that software program you see heavily advertised on TV and in airports. We learned to speak long before we could read or write, just to get started with your first lessons using a method which includes reading, writing, and grammar, all the stuff that slows you down. And if you're like other people who try software programs, you may find yourself frustrated and annoyed at having to spend hours in front of your computer doing drill after drill when you'd much rather be out in the world experiencing life, especially if you're coming home tired after sitting behind a computer all day at work. This might be why so many people who get started using software programs just stop and never even come close to achieving their dream. Next, you could try enrolling in English language classes. And for at least the first year, you'll spend all your time with your head in a textbook learning useless grammar rules and endless vocabulary lists without learning how to actually speak a language at all. Learning a language isn't like learning math or science, but that's exactly how everyone tries to teach it. Honestly, if you're watching this video, you've probably already tried learning English language that way, and you already know how ineffective those techniques actually are. Finally, you could try total immersion, taking off to a foreign country for months or even a full year to finally get English new language. As long as you've got the guts to go and regularly talk to native speakers, you'll hopefully learn more than anything you could possibly buy, and I highly recommend it. And you'll have to uproot your entire life, leave your friends and family behind, and get permission from your boss to be out of the country for months on end, which really isn't very likely. Let me ask you a question. Years from now, when you're looking back on your life, how are you going to feel if you could have gotten started learning English second language simply by listening and responding to your
mobile phone? All you need is a video playable mobile phone. Any smartphone will do. You can not only hear the audio but see the text as well simultaneously. Example of basic files.
Hello everybody. My name is Natasha. I'm going to tell you a very famous fairy tale about a girl's wish that did come true. It's called Cinderella. Once upon a time, there was a gentleman who married for his second wife the proudest and most haughty woman there ever was. She had been married before and already had 2 daughters who were exactly like her in all things. He had likewise by his first wife a young daughter, but of unequalled goodness and sweetness of temper, which she took from her mother, who was the best creature in the world. This sweet little girl missed her mother, who had died, ever so much.
Example of advanced files.
Have you seen a doctor? You look terribly pale. I felt dreadful, even before John collapsed. As if I knew something was coming.
Excuse me, madam. That detective wants to speak with you again.
So what on earth happened? Now, you know I'm not one to pry, but I couldn't help overhearing in the hallway. It seems that John collapsed suddenly after a light breakfast of tea and kumquat marmalade toast, and the maid found him purple in the face and cold to the touch on the bathroom floor.
But most people let their dreams and ambitions pass them by. They get too busy to come up with some other lame excuse to forget to improve themselves and become the person they always wanted. How are you going to feel if you could have taken that very first step, could have begun to speak English language as quickly and easily as your average 2-year-old, exposed yourself to a whole new world of culture, conversation, and opportunity, just by putting on a pair of headphone methodology that's scientifically sequenced to lock language material into your brain after just one listen? I know you've been thinking about English language can change your life for a long time, whether it's a higher paying job, more adventurous travel, or just feeling more capable. And I know you've always regretted not learning English language when you were young, when it was supposedly so easy to do, though you'll discover it's actually much easier for an adult to learn. I want you to try it for yourself and see how well it actually works. Use the material, go through the audios, experience for yourself how easy it is to just pick English language, even one you've never even heard spoken before, using this revolutionary and proven methodology, and without ever having to do language drills, learn grammar rules, or memorize endless lists of vocabulary words. When you think about it, you've really just got 3 choices ahead of you right now. Option number 1. Stop watching this video and do nothing. Keep going the way you are now. Keep being frustrated by and maybe even ashamed by the fact that you can't speak English language. Option number 2, enroll in English language learning school where you're forced to pay out the nose just to drill vocabulary and try to ignore that tiny voice in the back of your mind that tells you again and again there was an easier and better way and you didn't take it. Let me ask you a question. Do you want to learn the mechanics of how English language works or just how to speak it? Can you imagine what it's going to feel like just to know what to say without scouring your memory for vocabulary or worrying about grammar? Can you imagine what it's going to feel like to speak naturally so you blend in easily, to feel comfortable in a foreign country? I hope you learned a lot from this presentation and were both inspired and encouraged to learn English language. Thank you for your time today. Still here? Let me just answer some of the most common questions you might have. I took English language classes for years in school and never got anywhere. Can I really strike up a conversation? Absolutely. We sometimes think that schools have a vested interest in making it take a long time to learn a language. Unfortunately, language learning is treated like math or science, and that's exactly what it isn't. When you learn to speak by ear, you'll find that you'll intuitively grasp the language. What if instead teachers used a better methodology and had students speaking at a high degree of proficiency first, and only then taught everything else? And as a result, wouldn't forget it for life. It's 100% audio-based and doesn't require a computer. Found that the most effective way to learn to speak is by ear, and one of the advantages of using an audio program is that it's portable and easy to use. That means you can use it while you're doing something else that's mindless, like going to work, doing the dishes, walking on a treadmill, and so forth. You see, most customers who buy language learning courses are at least 35 years old, educated, and work behind a computer all day. It's really difficult to make time at home after work to sit behind a computer again. That focusing on reading and writing before learning to speak makes it very difficult to learn a language. And to find a way to allow adults to learn faster than children, and essentially, it meant adults needed to learn like children, and that's done by hearing. When you know what sounds right, everything else is easy, and that includes reading and writing. We'd suggest going to your local college bookstore and buying a textbook if you want to learn to read and write. We only focus on oral proficiency. After learning to speak, when moving on to reading, you'll experience a feeling like seeing an English word written on paper that you perhaps had only ever heard by ear before. In other words, it feels familiar. If you can't listen in one session, then break it up. And remember, you can learn anywhere. Most folks don't need to repeat a lesson more than once. We really have a near foolproof system for learning a language if you can invest just an hour a day. And if hour a day is too frequent, or you need to skip a day here or there, don't worry about it. This isn't a race. Just continue where you left off. Aren't I too old to learn a new language? I thought only kids could learn a new language easily. You're never too old. Can you believe they're discovered that adults can learn a language even faster than kids? Why are our schools still making kids do vocabulary drills and grammar tests? I'm sure you've heard of many people complaining about our school system and trying to change it. Learning by ear is the most effective way to learn a language because humans are uniquely gifted to attach complex meanings to sounds. And that's why any language learning program, to be truly effective, must be sound-based rather than visual. Look, when compared to other programs, the approach is as easy as listening to music. You can sing along with more than 2,000 songs because of a function of working memory called the phonological loop. Our approach harnesses this phonological loop so that you remember not just the words, but exactly how they sound and what they mean. That all being said, we came up with this simple 10-point checklist. If any of the following 10 items appeal to you, then you definitely should not buy our course. You want to memorize grammar rules. You want verb conjugation drills that you can practice over and over. You want to reference a dictionary frequently while speaking. You enjoy studying textbooks and answering the review questions at the end. You like homework. You like taking tests. You want to learn to read before you learn to speak. You really want to do drills on a computer and you're willing to block out time for that. You like to spend hours memorizing vocabulary lists. You believe learning should be hard. Obviously, I'm kidding around here, but I hope that makes the point. We've found that almost everyone can learn using our approach because, after all, almost every child learns how to speak, and it's the same basic method, just scientifically improved to make it more efficient and effective. Of course, you might not be successful with our course if you have serious hearing issues or trouble repeating simple phrases and imitating native speakers. Organic learning is natural learning. You learn to speak long before you learn to write, and you learn to speak by hearing words spoken correctly and in context. Language is assimilated naturally through hearing. Other language courses use the opposite approach, attempting to teach language as though it were math or science, which is why most people think it's hard to learn language. It's core vocabulary. You don't need to learn all the words in the language, just the ones people use every day. Fluency isn't determined by how many words you know, but by how well you use the words and phrases that are part of common everyday language. You don't need to learn 1 million words to learn English. You can be articulate with a vocabulary of only 2,500 words and phrases and discover how easy it is to learn English language without memorizing vocabulary, without written homework or tests. Follow your heart. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. Please email us or call.
Some other references.
Hi, this is Kristen Dodds. Learn with your ears and not with your eyes. So learn with your ears, not with your eyes. Listen, listen, listen. Ideally, you want to listen for 6 months or longer if possible before speaking. Listening is the key to fluency. Now, why focus on listening first? Why learn with your ears and not with your eyes? With listening, you will learn grammar, you will learn vocabulary, you will understand better, and you will get faster. There's a lot of research about listening first. Listening is the most important thing you can do. If you learned English the way that I learned French in middle school, high school, and college or university, then you probably have problems speaking English. Because in school, you learned with your eyes. For example, there was a focus on textbooks, on learning from textbooks. You learned how to read English. You learned how to write English. You learned how to think about English, so that you probably know a lot of grammar rules. You probably know more grammar rules than a native English speaker. That's because native English speakers don't learn with their eyes. They learn with their ears. A baby doesn't pick up a textbook and start studying grammar rules. A baby does not learn with their eyes. A baby learns with the ears by listening. A baby learns by listening to the parents make sounds and speak to them. A baby just listens and listens and listens for a year and a half to 2 years before they start speaking. So, how must you learn English? You must learn English by listening first. You must listen first if you want to speak English automatically, easily, quickly, and correctly. Now, there are 2 important things to remember. The first thing is, what do you listen to? You want to make sure that you are listening to easy English. So what do I mean by easy English? I mean that you want to be able to understand 95% or more of the English you're listening to without stopping or without using a dictionary. So for example, you might listen to a children's program, or you might listen to a children's audiobook. Another example would be a children's movie. If these are too easy, then increase the level a little bit. You could listen to a teenager's program. Now, by teenager, I mean, in American years, teenager would be 13, 14, 15, up to 19 years old. So if a children's program or audiobook is too easy, try listening to a teenager program or audiobook, teenager movie. These are all examples of things that you can listen to for easy English. It is okay to listen to something that's a little bit difficult if you have the text For example, if you're listening to an English lesson, as long as you have the text, that's okay. As long as you can read along, that's okay. Another example would be an audio article or a speech. As long as you have the text, these things would be okay. Second, the second important thing I want you to remember is, when do you listen? You want to listen all the time. So get an MP3 player or get an iPod and listen, listen, listen. Listen all the time. Listen on your way to work. Listen on your lunch break. Listen when you're exercising. Listen on your way home from work. Listen in the evenings or before you go to bed. Listen as much as you can. Listen first. It's super easy and super powerful. Focus on learning with your ears and not with your eyes. Remember, it's the most powerful rule. Okay, bye.
Do not study grammar rules. Do not study grammar rules. Now, I know this may be a surprise to you because your English teachers have always told you that you must study grammar rules. In high schools or secondary schools, in universities, in language schools, the English teachers teach grammar, and then they teach more grammar, and then they teach even more grammar. And that is the method that you have used to study English. So, now I have a question for you. Have you been successful using that method? If you're watching this video, then you've studied English before. That means you have probably studied a lot of grammar rules. So you need to ask yourself this question. Can you speak English quickly, easily, and automatically? If the answer is no, then you need to ask why not? Why not? Because you have been studying English for many years. Why can't you speak English quickly, easily, and automatically? Well, the answer for most people is because they studied too much grammar. But you are not to blame for this. No. Your English teachers are to blame for this because your English teachers made you study grammar. I bet you hated studying grammar rules, but you did it because your English teachers made you study them. Okay, so why is it bad to study grammar rules? Well, when you study grammar rules, then you think about these grammar rules. You think about the past perfect tense, the present perfect tense, the future perfect tense, prepositions. You think about all these grammar rules before you speak. And when you speak, you do not have a lot of time. When you're writing, you have a lot more time. You can write slowly. You can correct your mistakes. You can even look in a book if you need help. When you're writing, you have a lot of time. But when you are speaking, you do not have a lot of time. When you are speaking, there is no time to think about verb tenses and verb conjugations and definite articles, indefinite articles, adverbs. There is no time to think about those grammar rules when you are speaking. When someone asks you a question, they want you to answer that question immediately. They don't want to wait 1 minute while you're thinking about grammar rules. No, no, no. So, that is why it is important that you not study grammar rules. When you study grammar rules, then you think about those grammar rules before you speak, and that means that you hesitate before you speak, and you speak much slower, and you understand much slower. Okay, so how do native speakers learn grammar then? Well, I am an English native speaker, and I can tell you that I never studied grammar rules when I was a young boy and I was learning how to speak English. When I was 3 years old and I was learning how to speak English, my mother and father never made me study grammar rules. They didn't do it. So, I still speak English very well and I use correct grammar. And I never studied grammar rules. Well, when I was 12 years old, I studied grammar rules in school, but that was for writing. It was only for writing, it was not for speaking. You do not want to study grammar rules for speaking. For writing, it's different. Okay, so how do native speakers learn grammar then? Well, they learn grammar through listening. Listening to correct grammar again and again and again and again. And when you listen to this grammar over and over again, it gets stored deeply in your brain. Then, when it is time for you to speak, you will be able to use this grammar because you will know what correct English grammar sounds like. Okay, so the best way to learn grammar is through input. So listening is one form of input. Listening to correct grammar over and over again. Now reading is another form of grammar. Is another form of input. And you can use reading also to learn grammar, but you won't use it as much as listening. Most of the time you will have listening as your main form of input. But if you do read, please, do not read textbooks. You should read easy English novels. Maybe novels that a young child would read. But most of your input will come from listening. You will listen to correct grammar over and over again. And this is how you will learn grammar. This is how a child or a native speaker learns grammar. And you do it quickly, easily, and automatically without memorizing any grammar rules. Don't study grammar rules. Do not study grammar rules. When you study grammar rules, you think about the grammar before you speak, and then you hesitate before you speak. You speak much slower, and you understand much slower. So if you have any grammar books, throw them away. Bury them in your backyard. You can even burn them. But if you do burn them, please be safe, okay? Okay, so we're really happy to have you with us, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Have you learned textbook English in school, but struggled to understand the real English that people speak on the street, in restaurants, in hotels? Do you feel embarrassed and shy sometimes when you try to speak English? Do you feel nervous about speaking English? Are you frustrated after years and years and years of studying grammar and textbooks, and still you are unable to speak well? Do you have trouble understanding American movies or American television? You're not alone. Most people who learn with the old methods, the traditional school methods, have these exact same problems. Our English Conversations course is designed to teach you to understand real English and use real English. What is real English? Real English is the natural English we use every day. Americans, Canadians, British people, when we talk to friends, when we talk to family, in a business meeting. It's the English you hear on television or from movies. It's not the formal textbook English you got in school. When you join our English Conversations course, Each unit includes a real conversation. This is 2 or more native speakers, Americans, British people, talking to each other, having a natural conversation. They are not reading a script. They're not reading from an outline. It's a natural conversation about a normal topic, not planned. Of course, you get the text, the transcript, so you can read along and understand everything. You get a vocabulary lesson that explains the slang, the idioms, any other difficult vocabulary in each conversation. You get a mini-story lesson where you learn English using stories. The most powerful way to learn to speak, to improve your listening, to get better grammar skills, and to build your vocabulary. These stories teach you grammar naturally, the way children learn it, not by studying long lists of rules. The Real English Conversations course will bring you to an advanced level of English. Join the course now and speak English clearly, fluently, and powerfully.